it can't just be about running a company for money. It has to be more about what are the opportunities? How can you make an impact and a difference? And to kind of connect the dots, the technology and then the business opportunity were.
Welcome to the show, everyone. This is Mason, and we have a short but really fun and exciting show talking about tech disrupting a part of the real estate industry that most of us don't really think about unless it annoys us. But before we get into the show, Dan, how are you doing?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day. This was a fun podcast. Lots of business going on here, late August 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't you introduce our guest for us, Dan?
Absolutely. So we have Casey LeBlanc, and he is the founder of New Venture Escrow and Venture Suite. And simply put, New Venture Escrow is an escrow company that implements tech. So anyone in the real estate space like Mason and I can probably relate to the endless frustration with title companies and attorneys handling escrow all over the country. Very antiquated, very slow. And Casey and his company, New Venture Escrow, have really meshed tech and escrow to create a much more efficient and consumer-friendly system for executing real estate transactions. So along with that, he's a commercial investor, and we hit on that a bit, but we really do a deep dive into how he's disrupting the escrow company. So this is a great conversation, and time to bring him in.
You look awesome, man. The white jacket is a vibe. I wore an ivory coat to prom, and you are pulling it off so much better.
I thought you guys had a dress code, so I was trying to dress to impress. And actually, I look like I'm going to the races. The Del Mar races are here in San Diego right now. So if depending on how long this podcast goes, I'm just going to head up and go bet on some ponies later.
There we go. I love it. I'm in Colorado Springs, which I think we just got ranked the worst dressed city in the United States. And it's because people like Dan Haberkas live here. But
I just made fun of one of my buddies for dressing terribly. And for the last week and a half, he's been sending me stuff like, hey, what about this? What about this? And I'm like, look, I made a joke. That doesn't mean I want to be a professional shopper. So I'm limited on my time, but good luck.
Yeah, right. There we go. Well, Casey, can you give us the 2 or 3 minute spiel about yourself, how you got started in business and where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I don't think it'll take 2 or 3 minutes. Right out of college, I worked for somebody for 3 months. Within those 3 months, started bringing ideas to the table with regards to, I think we could do this, or let's try this, and immediately was shut down. So I very quickly understood that working for somebody was going to be a challenge for me. I had kind of grown up in sports, did well in sports, played collegiately and then a little bit professionally. And as kind of a leader in sports, decided that, running from the top and leading other, athletes was a passion of mine. And so doing that in the business world was going to be a way for me to kind of take some of the great things that I learned in sports. And so started a mortgage company where we were selling wholesale loans to Wall Street, learned that from the back end out, grew to about 200 employees during the heyday, then started buying other companies, recognized really earlier that we could kind of stack other companies in the space, make money through the business that we were doing, and ultimately landed in the escrow space. And so for the last maybe 12 or 13 years, have had my own just escrow company. I would think when I was younger, thought I could have a ton of different companies, and then recognized as I got older, the focus in one was helpful for me as far as just kind of managing my time and travel and use of resources. So that journey started with, again, the company's New Venture Escrow. And we were, the way it was kind of founded was recognizing that the escrow space is completely broken. This was, 12, 13 years ago. So I wanted to start a company that was an escrow company that did tech. So we were going to hire developers from day one. We were going to kind of bootstrap on a budget, but also with the idea we were going to have technology as a foundational piece for the culture, for the strategy of the company, and build an escrow company around technology. So we've been doing that now for 12, 13 years. And it's obviously with any journey, it has its ups and downs, but there's been a lot more ups than there has been downs.
That's great and interesting. What sport were you professionally playing?
Football, actually.
Nice.
Yeah. So I had a cup of coffee with the 49ers a long time ago. And I guess if you have a cup of coffee, you can still get to talk about it years later. You feel a little bit like Al Bundy, but I don't care anymore because I'm a 49er fan. So it works out.
There it is. And there's a lot there that you want to unpack. And it sounds like you experienced and then grew up from the entrepreneurial vice of shiny object syndrome and wanting to do 50,000 different things and start new companies and buy companies and sell companies and everything like that. But we're going to really get to deep dive into the world of escrow. And I really like what you said of you're an escrow company that does tech. You're not a tech company that does escrow. Because I've seen a lot of companies totally collapse. My wife actually worked for Bright Health, which was an insurance startup that really focused on being a tech company that did insurance. And that's why the company no longer exists anymore. So let's dive into your escrow company. What is it? What did it look like whenever you bought it? I think was it 2010 or 2011?
Yeah, it was in 2011. It looked like a piece of paper because all it was a shell license. And so it was a true kind of startup. The license had been around forever. It was out of LA. And so it was just basically documents. It was nothing but an idea at that point. And so we were a true, kind of startup. Out of a closet is where we, hired our first employee, set up a computer. And the idea was going to be to build it around tech if only people could see. It's, like the Apple or a lot of the startups where it starts out of a garage. Well, we were very similar from the escrow space is that you buy the shell of the license, the corporation, you kind of fund the account to the minimums because we are regulated pretty strictly, and then you hire an employee, then you hire a second employee, teammate or whatever, and you go from there. So that's the kind of the origination of it, but it was the kind of the idea that was really different. I think there's a lot of escrow companies. There's always been escrow and title. It's always been a very antiquated space, and so the idea for me, especially at that time, was for me to get into a kind of a boring business. It can't just be about running a company for money. It has to be more about what are the opportunities? How can you make an impact and a difference? And to kind of connect the dots, the technology and then the business opportunity where it kind of got me excited, where I was interested. It was interesting. It was something unique and different. I didn't know anything about tech. I just knew that there was a broken industry and technology was kind of a buzzword at the time. I was from the Bay Area. So I was trying to put those things together, which didn't really make sense. And I knew that because nobody else had done it, I was probably headed in the right direction.
So, okay, given that, Casey, with new Venture Escrow, you're bringing tech into an antiquated space, and that's certainly something I can relate to, and Mason can as well. With our businesses, we do a lot of volume all over the country, and man, if you go to the South and the Carolinas, a lot of places, they won't even send wires still. It is so backwards. So 2010, yeah, what were you doing differently then? Because tech has come a long way in the last 14 years. How are you differentiating yourself with tech then? And then what has that evolved to today? I've got to think the blockchain is involved. So yeah, tell us a little bit about how you're using tech to actually stand out and make the process more efficient.
Yeah, when I first got into escrow, I started asking escrow clients what their biggest pain points with escrow. So I was talking to clients. I was also talking to our staff, like what is wrong with how you're processing an escrow or the experience. So I was trying to solve a couple of different things. One of which there were these huge paper files. Everything was being stored and printed, and it just looked terrible, right? And this was 2011, so you knew there was better technology that already exists. So I was trying to use technology that already exists and just infuse it into an industry that had refused it for a long time. Digital signature. We built a mobile app at the time to where it was just basically it would organize and categorize all your documents that you either needed or had signed. A lot of people through the escrow process didn't know and still don't know what's going on. So it's a kind of a black box when you get into escrow. It's like, okay, you got the house. A lot of people are kind of coming at you. The way that I look at escrow is that we're kind of a point guard in the transaction. We deal with all agents, all lenders, title companies. So we have all of this information for consumers and agents. So I thought if we housed it in one place, they could stay up to date, they could be informed, and they would have like a digital filing cabinet. So that started in 2011, and it's been, I want to say it's kind of been, tech companies have came in and realized the same problem. They've poured a lot more resources and money into it. We've continued to build and develop our own. So we have a unique kind of way in which we do escrow and the way in which our consumers and agents digest it. But more people have come into the space now, but that's originally how it started. Our industry, just to kind of fast forward as to maybe some of the things that we're talking about today, when you say blockchain, absolutely, like smart contracts and blockchain, those are all things that I think people kind of understand from a conceptual basis, but we're still very, very far away. There's a lot of jurisdiction and a lot of county and red tape throughout regulatory red tape that I still think we're probably 5 to 10 years away from seeing anything significant with that. So it's, while we're a tech company and we're an escrow company that builds custom tech, we are not close, in my personal opinion, to having a true, kind of blockchain smart contract experience. I do think it's coming. I just don't think we're that close. I think our industry, real estate specifically, is really slow to adopt things because we can figure it out, but the consumer would have a hard time and trust with some of the tech that I think it's still, I still think we're pretty far away from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And with it being so heavily regulated as well, for it to get to the blockchain, that's going to take a long time. Even if the tech is there, it'll take regulators a long time to catch up.
Yeah.
No, that would be great. None of the companies I use have an app, at least not one I'm aware of. So that's definitely a differentiator. So, and it's funny, you said, what are the biggest frustrations? I'm not sure what the norms are with new venture, but I'm often dealing with HUDs that don't come out till the day of closing, and they'll send me the docs 24 hours before. Hey, we need these notarized by tomorrow. So, what have you done on the people side of things to be more efficient and to have a healthy culture? Because I have dealt with so many escrow companies and attorneys and attorney states that they're just unpleasant and passive aggressive and clearly don't want to be there. So how do you handle the human aspect of it?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. So I'll say this: we are a people business first. We layer technology on to support people and create an experience that's unique and different. That's fundamentally, as a business, that's just something that we really believe in. So let's talk a little bit about the people. One is, I think when I first got into the escrow space, one big problem I recognized is that they were overworked, underpaid, and not supported specifically with technology. Because there's a lot of things that tech can do and already does that our industry wasn't utilizing properly. As an example, so we track people's usage on computers, not necessarily to kind of see who's working, who's not. I think if you hire really good professionals, those people are going to keep them busy with a lot of work, which we do. But we're monitoring to make sure they don't work too much. I think people get burnt out when they were working 12 to 15 hours. And that's something that we're trying to make sure that they can balance productivity with production and performance, So we monitor that. So we look at how much time that they're actually spending doing the work. We also support all of our people with certain technologies. And a new one that I think the big buzzword around pretty much any industry at this point is AI. So, the logical question is like, are you using AI and how are you using AI? And a lot of people are sitting here trying to figure it out. And it's a legitimate question. I think every industry needs to have some deep conversations around what our strategy with AI is. And for us, we've been leaning in to it for a couple of years now, actually, and trying to think about, okay, AI has been around for a long time. It's, the ChatGPT really made it famous when they launched at the end of, I think, 2022. So one example is we built into our technology the functionality that an AI can answer a lot of the questions or retrieve a lot of the documents that consumers and agents would need when we're not working. So as an example, we're going to send out a text message when you first open up It's basically going to say, hi, we're your AI support system. And the agent, when they're on a showing or at a, doing a negotiation on a Sunday night at 7:00, can ping the AI for a certain document that they know is in the file. We're not there. The AI has the ability to go into the file, and as long as it's in our registered documents that are able to be shared, it'll send them a PDF. There's a whole other litany of ways in which that technology can work, and we're at the kind of the cusp of it. But that's one example that typically in almost every other title and escrow company someone would have to sit down on a Monday. They would have to read the email or the request or check the voicemail. They would have to go into the database, find it, send it. Let's call that 10 minutes, right? So if you start shaving off 10 minutes on, most people are working on 30 different files, you save that person a ton of time doing, I would say more elementary work than what they should be doing. So if we have people really professional, really good at what they do, we keep them doing highest and best use, I think we're going to be in a lot better position as far as having people that are healthy and happy.
I think that's great. And I think the focus on user experience is evident in everything that you're saying. And it's something that Dan, myself, and so many investors and agents experience with any title or escrow company that we're working with. And I guess on that particular note, and then I want to dive into some of the specialty escrow stuff that you guys are doing. How much involvement are you guys doing with the actual title process, any title insurance related stuff, or are you guys going third party with that, or how does that work?
Yeah, good question. So the Southern California is such a unique market. I would say, 90% of any resale transaction, there is a independent escrow company, and then there's a title company. So your Fidelities, your First Americans are going to do the title, and then an independent company such as New Venture is going to do the escrow. That doesn't mean that we're just kind of isolated and siloed in the work that we do. We're working together. It's just two different companies. So Southern California is a little unique in that regard, but First American and all the Fidelity brands are typically the ones doing all of the title. They're insuring it. They're not necessarily doing all the title work. There's kind of a way in which you do business in almost every jurisdiction within California, and so San Diego is no different. The title companies do a certain portion of the deal. Escrow does a certain portion of the deal. Like anything, it's a matter of communication. Kind of understanding what's typically done in a transaction. And so that's how most deals are done in San Diego.
That makes sense, and appreciate the clarification there. With working with a lot of different stakeholders, whether it's realtors or these larger title companies, how are you able to kind of integrate your technological solutions and process with the work that they're doing? Because, there's title companies that, are very, very old, and there are the big nationwide players, but there's a lot of people that are adamant on using their cousin Joe's, old title company that everything's on paper. So how do you kind of work with stakeholders on the tech integration part?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things to unpack there. I think first of all is how we go about getting our business. We have a whole suite of things that are adding value to the listing agent. The listing agent in Southern California primarily chooses which title and escrow. So they're going to have, a business development rep for us, and then they're going to have our suite of value adds that we offer to an agent, one of which is technology. We have others. The first part of the question is kind of interesting, and it kind of contradicts some things with regard to how do you work with a bunch of different companies and then utilize your technology. One thing that we found is that on the backside of a deal, once the deal is in escrow, nobody really wants to log into a portal. Nobody wants to remember a new username and password. They understand technology, but if you don't make it so simple to get the information, to make it a better experience for them, it almost turns where the technology becomes like a buzzword that actually hurts your cause versus helps. And so you have to be really cognizant when you're building technology. Don't overthink it. Ask a lot of questions with regard to experience. And then don't force it on people. Some people don't want to log in or look at the stuff on tech or text. Some people want to come into the office. Some people want to have the old school experience. So what we try to do is create this custom experience around who our client is, how they like to do business, have a dedicated account executive that's going to understand who they are, what they want, mirror them and match them with how they want to do their business, and then try to, take it from there. Slowly, you can introduce different things and they may become more accustomed to it. But we can't be so egotistical where we're like, oh, hey, we built this technology. We've got these developers. We're so cool. I think companies do that, and they lose sight of what's really important, which is not that you use my tech or our tech, excuse me, but that it's available. Should you, be interested in a different type of experience, our reps will help you. But under no circumstance are we forcing this. These are just, it's like a buffet. Take what you want. As long as you use us, we're happy. We want to make sure you have a 5-star experience one way or the other. So that's kind of how we look at that part of it.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I want to ask, and I guess challenge some of the conversations that we were having at the beginning of this, of you've kind of narrowed the scope and niched down within this escrow space. However, when I'm looking at the, specialty escrow services, you've got like 3 dozen here, ranging from commercial to bank-owned to IRA custodian purchases, cannabis, tons of different stuff. Talk to me a little bit about how, you're able to stay within the scope of escrow services, but diversify into all of these more specialty areas that use it.
Yeah, so we looked at the last couple of years, and there was several years ago, we started to recognize that the market had really shifted. A lot of people were in 2.5% to 3% rate. Rates shot up to 8%. There was this arbitrage of what people could afford. So people were house locked. They weren't moving. So we saw transaction volume nationally go from 6 million to somewhere around 4 million. In Southern California, it may have been a little bit worse. Inventory and transaction volume had just nearly stopped. So we looked at it and said, okay, a couple of things that we need to do to strategically position ourselves. One is we need to grow market share. So we've got to be really concerned with what is going into escrow and then what percentage we're getting. So we had to be really efficient with our current business model. From there, we have this list of clients, these agents and consumers. Let's expand our offerings, still within the same industry, still using our technology. Let's just expand our education or our awareness around stuff that actually is still escrowed. So it's still the same trust accounts, different trust accounts, but you just have a trust account. And then there's all of the things that you could potentially escrow. So let's go out and find the experience necessary to close it with our current existing clients and then new clients. So we're going to open up new doors. One of the things with all of these specialty escrows is that it's a worldwide, it's a global license. So it's unlike California residential or commercial, where you have to be licensed in a particular state. These specialty items are not based upon land. So we did a deal where we did gold bars that were being transported from Africa to Italy. And it was just really unique. So all of these quote unquote specialty deals, they're all very unique and different. You can escrow a watch, you can escrow surrogacy, you can escrow Bitcoin, there's just so many different things. You can really escrow anything, right? So we're a trusted third party. There's a lot of people that have goods and services that are being exchanged for fiat or money. We're just the trusted third party that can hold these things until the two parties mutually agree that the contract has been executed. So, with all of that said, we could go on for an hour on all the different things you could escrow. We just wanted to have the licensing and the experience to be able to execute on some of that during a time where residential and commercial had just been halted.
No, I think it all makes sense, and it's there's a lot of opportunity being, for lack of a better word and not in a derogatory way at all, of being the middleman that coordinates and makes sure that all of this happens in a safe, secure, and trusted way. But I'd love to talk about the business aspect of it. Beyond the tech and the services provided, that's how you make your money, is on these transactions. How does that kind of work? Is it part of the rationale behind going into some of these specialty escrow services is you're able to charge a higher fee. And then kind of what are the numbers looking like? What's your transaction volume? We're end of August 2024 when we're recording this. What's the year looking like?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So specialty division for us is a small division. We have the ability to do it. We have it on our website. We don't have reps that specifically go after it. We just want to make sure that if our agents and clients and consumers have an escrow need, we're able to satisfy it. So I would say it's slightly less than 10% of our business. So it's not a massive, kind of earner for us. It's good to have, but it's not something that we're, super active in selling. It's just something that we do, and it's less than 10%. So the other question is how does 2024 look? I think the thing that I'm most proud about is that transaction volume is still relatively flat when you compare it against, either pre-pandemic or COVID or during COVID years. But the last 2 years has been fairly flat. However, we've been able to double our market size. So I'm really, really excited. We track transaction volume in the counties that we represent, and then we take our share of what those are. I'm happy to report we're somewhere around 15% of market share, which for us, we had been previously somewhere around 8%. So we've been able to, kind of take the last 2 years, build a great team, take our systems and kind of add to it. We've had the time, and then we've just picked up share. So with what that means for a company like ours is if transaction volume increases and we keep or grow market share, we're set up and positioned really well.
Yeah, and that's amazing, and congrats on that. Doubling market share is huge, especially in a market like that that's so competitive. I do want to look, I guess, a little bit to the future. We touched on it a little bit. You had some thoughts and insights. I feel like the blockchain theoretically could and should be the future. For escrow services, for title, for so many things involved in real estate transactions where, just every issue I can think of running that I run into in my business, buying and selling vacant land all over the country. If the deed was on the blockchain, this would have never been an issue, type of thing.
Right.
So I would love to hear your insights as a tech leader, as a leader in the escrow space, and as someone that has invested so much in real estate. Where do you see blockchain taking the real estate industry?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the way in which a smart contract works, or currently from my understanding of it, is that you have an agreement in place when all of the points of the deal are satisfied, that contract is now able to be executed. Well, that sounds a lot like escrow, right? Like that is pretty much what I have 100 people upstairs and around the Southern California doing on a daily basis. So you don't need to be someone who can see into the future to recognize that there's already technology that exists that does what our current job is to some degree. Now, does that mean that there are going to be no people in escrow or title? Look, I'm not willing to go that far. And I already know how slow all these jurisdictions are to adopt. As an example, we're California, right? We're supposed to be on the forefront of technology and innovation. We are the last state to acknowledge and accept remote online notary, which is proven to be more secure, more advanced, they're just all of the different things. We still have these notaries running around making $200 per file to sit down in front of someone and hand sign, 1,000 pieces of paper. Now, that doesn't feel very advanced to me. We're still using paper. We're still using a notary who's looking at, are they trained to look at an ID and say, this is real or not real? They're not taking any picture. There's no, it's just crazy to me how notaries work. So if we can't even get the notary portion of a deal right, to start talking about blockchain, I still think we are at the very bare minimum, maybe 10 years from that, maybe even further. So what's going to happen in the interim? What's that 10 years? Like, what's the next 10 years look like? And by the way, hopefully in those 10 years, I'm able to retire so I don't have to deal with blockchain. I could just say, hey, I'll let the next young kid figure that part of it out and have fun with it. And I could just sit on the sidelines and enjoy. But the next 10 years, I do think that we're going to go through, and I think it's going to be within the next maybe 2, we're going to go through a big boom, a lot of transaction volume. So how are we going to capitalize on that? Like right now, I'm building new technology for the way in which we acquire business. And so while my original kind of strategy was, let me change the escrow experience, I think a lot of tech companies have come in and said, yeah, you're right, that experience sucks. Nobody's happy. Nobody knows what's going on. So there's a lot of money that was poured into that. There still is. We still are too. Where I see blue ocean is going to be how we acquire business. And so that's where we are, or I am really, really heavily invested. I spend a lot of my time thinking about that. And I think over the next, hopefully maybe year and a half, I'm going to try to disrupt the organization and methodology on how we go out and get new business in the title and escrow space. Because I don't know if it was Mason or you, Dan, I don't know, one of you guys said, well, you have an uncle who is on a park bench and sells title, and it's a lot of paper. All of that is absolutely still very prevalent in the title and escrow and real estate space. So how can we maybe think about that a little bit differently, do things a little bit differently to change some of that? So at least the consumer and agent knows what the true value proposition is for. And so what I've always wanted was for both the agent and the consumer to evaluate the company, the business decision on who gets title and escrow based off of value. So how much are you paying and what are you getting for that fee? If our service is deemed as the most valuable, we think that we're in good shape as far as capturing more share. So that's kind of the goal in which, over the next several years that we're kind of looking at how tech can help us grow.
Yeah. It's fun seeing the business development mind in action. I'm like the BD guy through and through and through, which is fun to watch.
Well, I've always said we don't have a business without sales and growth and revenue, right? Like we could have the greatest way in which to close escrow. If we don't have a contract to close, we're going to be in trouble. So for me, the way that I try to think about the business is hire really good specialists for escrow that keep them healthy and happy and supported, and then figure out how to change, innovate, and develop an industry that is so far behind the times. That's what I like to do. That's what gets me excited, gets me out of bed in the morning. And doing an escrow, like honestly, I tell everyone this, so it's not like I'm speaking out of turn. I talk to an escrow officer and I talk to them about what they do on a day in and day out basis. My brain does not work like that. If I had to sit behind a computer and operate from a contract and gathering documents, and none of that stuff gets me super excited. But for a lot of people, it does. So go out and find the best ones of those and then figure out, like, what do I like to do, and go do a bunch of that.
Yes. So don't make the mistake that all of us like to make and hire someone exactly like us to then go do pedantic work and hate it. So,
right. Absolutely.
Yes. So Casey, the escrow company is really interesting, and something that relates to that I want to get into is your commercial investing. So I looked through your Instagram, through some of your website and summary here of your experience. It looks like you own a number of office buildings throughout San Diego. So are these solely for you to put your business in, or do you have tenants? And just tell us a little bit about your commercial investing.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that we kind of thought of in 2017, because we are an escrow company, and I've always had this vision of escrow being a hub for deals. Well, we started to think about and we're in the real estate market, so I started to think about how we could look at office a little bit differently. And we work with a lot of agents in different communities throughout Southern California. So I wanted to buy and build something unique that we could build better community relations, have more events, do training. So create these office spaces that brought agents, investors, lenders together, including, different vendors that we have outside of just that, but, NHD and title reps, and build these communities within strategic areas. So, again, we have this kind of idea and ethos around technology. Well, I look at technology companies and they have these really cool offices. And so if we could do something on a more smaller scale, we create spaces for training, create spaces for professional use, create spaces for something active. One of the things I thought of also is, how do you get people that do escrow and sit at a desk? How do you keep them moving? How do you keep them active? Well, have something in your office that keeps agents there, keep the energy up. Right now I'm currently sitting, I don't know if you could see, but I'm sitting at a golf simulator. So we have a golf simulator in our office. We have restaurants. We have kitchens and bars, and I'm just going. See, there's a bar right there. Yeah. And then we got, this is like very active. This is the golf simulator right there. There's you guys. So that just gives you an idea. Oops. I'm not very good when it comes to how to place that, but it gives you an idea on how we think about space. Bring people together, give them an area in which to kind of congregate, to train, to socialize. Real estate is still let's shake hands. Let's do deals in person. Let's negotiate. Let's understand the community. So there's a couple of different things. One is build community. Two is buy and control the asset, customize it and build it for what, each individual, either area or, different segment of the business might need. So it is, again, we have 3 buildings. I'm in the process of acquiring a 4th. So the way that I look at it is understand the market, understand the area, get people there after, 1 to 3 years, acquire the asset, custom build it for what the area needs. And then the business has exploded in those areas because it's really proven to be, it creates a moat around our business because, physical assets are expensive. It takes a lot of time and energy to build custom spaces. So having those as a unique asset has really been valuable for our business.
Yeah, I love that because it's synergistic in a variety of ways. I'm sure you're saving some money on taxes. You're building additional wealth by slowly paying those buildings off. I'm sure over time they'll appreciate. Then you're also controlling that overhead because over the course of time, rents tend to go up, right? And so this way that's fixed more so. And then you can also control the building and the environment your employees work in to a much higher degree than if you're renting someone else's space. So I like everything about that.
It's, one of the things, though, just in full transparency, is office has gotten crushed, right? So office in general, but mostly it's Class A and downtown urban areas that, for us in San Diego, you got to pay $200 per spot per month for parking. Nobody's doing that anymore. So those buildings have just been completely, let go. And so while office in general, as a buzzword, has gotten kind of crushed from a valuation standpoint, the owner-user space in office is still quite unique. So I don't pay attention to the short-term, kind of that Zillow or LoopNet valuation on office. I just kind of do, to your point, I own it, I control it, I customize it, I cost seg it, I take the tax savings and then reinvest it into the industry in the space to create more valuable assets for our sales team to use.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you don't need it to go up tomorrow, or whether it goes up or down doesn't really matter because you're using it in your business, which is printing you money. So no, I like that way of thinking about it. So as we move towards the end of the show, I did want to talk a bit about some of the expansions you're doing. I saw something about you're entering Orange County, maybe even Cabo, which I know a ton of Southern California money's going down there. So where all are you looking to expand?
It's always been a dream of mine is to go international. Cabo is an hour, 40-minute flight from San Diego. I've got a ton of real estate contacts down there. We're going to put that we're going to draw that in the strategy with a pencil. What I can tell you is that we're going to be all throughout Southern California from a brick and mortar perspective. Our concept, our the way in which we build offices or think about offices, our technology, some of the value adds that we have from a sales and business development perspective have lended well to the market all throughout Southern California. So, going to the desert, going to LA, those are going to be where we're going to be brick and mortar. Aside from that, we're also looking and have done is where our technology is a separate company, and then we sell it to other states and jurisdictions. So we use our technology, custom technology for Southern California. I love the area. I never want to leave. California's beautiful. Again, we're not going to get into political, but California still has a lot of really good things. The weather is amazing. It's been 75 degrees for like the last 4 months. So, I love California. The technology can be sold, licensed anywhere else. And so we're going to brick and mortar, try to, continue to add locations in strategic areas. And then we're going to invest a lot of money in technology and try to license that technology into other states. We've been primarily in Texas and in Florida in how we've licensed the technology. So we'll expand that as we continue to build it.
The real most important question is, what's your handicap at after putting the golf simulator in to your office?
This is such an embarrassing answer. I was down here. I hadn't swung a club for several months, and I was down here yesterday. I don't even say I don't even have a handicap. Is the embarrassing part of this. And I have a golf simulator literally within 12 steps of my office. That tells you two things. One is it's busy. So the golf simulator is busy with a lot of clients and interaction. Two is that I'm busy because I got a lot of other things going on. And three, these golf simulators don't necessarily translate into the golf course on a lot of different things. And so it's a lot of fun. We use it. What's that?
I'm hearing so many excuses right now.
Yeah, I don't even have a handicap. I mean, if I shoot under 100, I'm stoked. How about that? That's my handicap. My handicap is my golf game.
It's relatable. No, that's so cool though. It's a really cool environment, and I love to see the growth and the expansion and everything, and potentially international and just kind of throughout. And there's a reason why millions of people are moving to California, which is a statistic that people forget to mention when they talk about the millions of people moving away from California.
I know
it can be tricky to do business, which makes a greater opportunity. And whenever you have mountains and ocean, people are always going to want to live there. Casey, we're coming to kind of the end of our time here. Are there any questions that we did not ask you that you wish we had asked you?
You guys really covered a lot. I love going on podcasts, just the ability to answer questions and talk through a little bit, just to make sure, even in my head, that I'm clear on what I'm doing, clear on the direction. You guys did a really good job as far as covering some of that. I think one of the things that is uncovered through it all is that our industry in space, title and escrow specifically, but real estate in general, still has a lot of room to grow. I think you guys kind of see in that space, you guys talk to a number of people, whether it be investors or other folks doing similar things as we're doing, but we're behind the times for where technology is and where our industry is. We seem to be 10 to 20 years behind where, innovation is. And so it's just kind of baffling. The thing would just say is that there's just so much opportunity, and if you look at it like that, but don't look at necessarily what we don't have or where we are, but what can any one of us do to build and innovate something unique and different to make an impact.
Right on. And Casey, where can people find more out about you?
I'm all over social now. My social guy who you talk to is behind me. He's making sure that I at least talk about it. So social, mostly Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I have a TikTok that I haven't seen, but that seems to be fun. My mom is on TikTok and she loves that I have a TikTok account. So that's kind of cool. CaseyLeBlanc.com. I'm being yelled at in my hair. So yeah, I have a website. So that's kind of cool too.
There we go. We'll make sure to link all your socials and your website and everything in the show notes. But Casey, this has been a ton of fun. I think anyone listening, whether you are a real estate investor or just a business owner, you can see that there's opportunities to implement tech and innovative solutions in places that it's an antiquated part of the industry. So Casey, thank you so much for coming on the show. This is Mason McDonald and Dan Haberkost with the Big Picture Blueprint signing off.